Royval is coming off arguably, fight of the year. He's a high pressure guy, and I think a lot of that can work for certain fighters. I think that plays a little bit into really what Kape likes.
Welcome to First Strike, only on VSiN, the sports betting network. Here's your hosts, Dave Ross and Rob Moreno.
And for the last time in 2025, it is First Strike here on VSiN. I'm your host, Dave Ross, joined by Kyle Anthony today. Kyle, great to have you on here. You're going to have Rob Moreno, of course, at the end of our program here to see what the model looks in this final fight card of 2025. But great to have you on before the end of the year. Can you believe, Kyle, we're already here with the final card of the year?
It's unbelievable. And we prep every week, and then now that we're gonna have like 5 weeks off, it's like, wow, it's like, what is it like for other sports if you're just focusing on like football? You have that lull, but this is nice. We got 2 pay-per-views starting next year, so we're gonna go out here, we're gonna crush it this weekend.
Yeah, I love it, Kyle. And again, everybody on X, if you're out there, give Kyle a follow at Kyle Anthony UFC. And it does get us to the final card of the year. And I look at this and I go, I know we're coming off a pay-per-view with all the guys in this weight class, right? We was really on display last week. But what a great main event, I believe, with Brandon Royval, the Raw Dog, back in there against Manel Kape. And Kape feels like that guy, Star Boy, that if you listen to him, he's ready to take over this division. I don't know if he is there yet. But what do you make of this? Because Royval's been there against with the champs and the champs in waiting and all those things. And now a big underdog against Manel Kape. Should Kape, in your opinion, be as big a favorite as he is?
It is a tough spot here because of, like you said, what Royval has done. And then you've also got the fact that Royval is coming off arguably, fight of the year against Joshua Van, which was an absolute war between these two guys. Most significant strikes landed in a 3-round fight, 419 strikes. There is a lot that was really going into that fight. But to me, the one thing about Royval is he's an exciting fighter. We like watching him. He's going to go out there. He's going to throw a lot of volume. He's going to stay in your face. He's a high pressure guy. And I think a lot of that can work for certain fighters where you kind of overwhelm them with that volume, with that pace. And he is a high risk, high reward guy. But the thing that he does here is he does like to brawl. He likes to get in there. He likes to throw a lot. And I think that plays a little bit into really what Kape likes. There's spots where we've seen Kape, he can be slow, a little bit lower volume. It's because he wants that counter striking. He wants that ability for you to come forward. If he's fighting a counter striker, he's going to also be kind of slow paced. And that's where I think some of this can get interesting because Kape is a dynamic striker. He's got the power. He's got the ability, the fast hand speed, all of these things that he does have. And I just really think that the fact that he's going to stay in the face of him is going to really say a lot here. So I do like Kape here. I think that he does get the job done. But where I'm going with this is I do like him by points here. And you've got Royval, who is a guy that hasn't been finished. When you're talking about knockouts, now he has been finished by injury against Brandon against Moreno, which was like a shoulder injury or whatever it was. I think this is a spot here where he's going to take the damage. I think that he's going to win on the scorecards. It's going to be some sweaty moments, but I do like Kape, and that's sitting around by points around plus 240.
I look at this too, Kyle, and Rob knows me well enough too that I'm always looking at those totals, right? And I'm going, ooh, if I don't want to lay the big number with Manel in this spot, and I do look at 3.5 at minus $1.40, so much easier price point to stomach because we know the durability normally that a guy like Brandon Royval has. I'm thinking if Kape hits him with something, and we've seen he's got that knockout power that you alluded to, Kyle. But he says, man, I don't like it on the hands. Can you see the Raw Dog pulling guard? Anything he can try to do to get the fight to the ground to extend the fight? Because I do agree that after the war he just took with Joshua Van and arguably the fight of the year in 15 minutes of fury, that he goes, man, I don't know if I want to stand there and do that with Manel Kape. And if I want to get to that over, does the fight have to get to the ground in order for this fight to be extended?
I think that Royval needs to just at least implement some type of wrestling type, even if he doesn't get it. It's just get him thinking, get him off balance a little bit. That's where I think Kape can even more be a little bit more patient. But to get to the over here, I don't even think he does need the takedowns. I think some clinching and those kinds of things can slow the pace down a little bit. But the fact that he's so durable, and then the fact that, you've got Kape who is so defensively aware, he's so light, he's in and out of the pocket. And yeah, they're gonna exchange. There's no doubt. Again, we are in the apex cage. We're gonna force a little bit more action in this spot. But I think the durability, the bigger shots will come from Kape. And I just think that, I do like that angle, though. I think the over is a nice little spot there.
And check your books because right now I'm seeing some different price points here on Cop. I'm seeing over $3 betting favorite in some. It's circa this morning in Kentucky, where I'm based, about minus 295. So there are some different price points depending on what you like. But I'm with you, Kyle. I think I might be getting down to that over and hope for the durability of the Raw Dog to be able to survive at
Mhm.
least deep into that fourth round. Another fight that I know that you have earmarked here, two of my favorite fighters to watch. That's Amanda Lemos against Jillian Robertson. Robertson can be a real dog. We know when that fight gets down to the ground. She's a big favorite here against Amanda at minus $2. Come back right now, Lemos, about $1.66 out there. And again, in women's MMA, normally when you see 2.5 in a 3-round projected fight, it's going to be juiced heavily to the over. It's not here, Kyle. It's juiced to the under two and a
Mhm.
half with the finishing potential that both these women have. What do you make of that? And does that get you to maybe a Robertson and maybe a submission prop? Are you looking in that regard?
This is a spot actually where, it almost like you really want to take that Jillian side. Jillian, since she's moved to 115, she's looked fantastic. It's a better for her frame. She's looked great. She's getting more takedowns. She's not being as bullied as much here. And I
Right.
guess the one big, couple big red flags on the most side is just the fact that one, this is a short notice fight ish. It's not something crazy, 4 or 5 weeks. So you've kind of got that, but also she's 38 years old now, and that short short notice, 38 years old. There are some things that
Mm,
I think it can be a tough stylistic matchup here, but where I do like here is that if Lamoshe is somewhat prepared here, and I would believe that she is. She's strong. She's got physicality. She's got a decent takedown defense. When she's flat on her back, she definitely can be held there. But I do think that Jillian is going to get some takedowns, going to get some cage pushing. Again, apex cage up against the fence here. I kind of lean more towards the over here.
mm.
I do think that there is going to be spots where Jillian is going to be able to get control, but I do think that you have Lamoshu is somewhat defensively aware when you're talking about submissions. I know she's been submitted standing and had some really weird situations, but I do think that she can stay safe in certain spots here. Jillian, I think, will find opportunities again to make it sweaty, to get it very close for a submission. But I do like Jillian here. I do like her by points if I'm going that way with it. It's another spot where I think that that's where that can go.
All right, so instead of necessarily laying that $2, look for Robertson either via the points, look for her maybe by decision here. And again, if you look into that over right now, 2.5, you can get that at minus $1.05. So it feels like a pretty good price point right now, Kyle, to hop in there. Kennedy Nzechukwu is an interesting fighter. We've seen here, and right now, to say the least, minus $1.30 here against Marcus Buchecha. And when you look at the total here, it is signifying that we believe there's a really good chance for somebody to go out because we're sitting at 7.5 minutes here, 1.5 rounds. It's just slightly to the over at $1.15. What do you make of Kennedy? Because he's such a different type fighter in the octagon, and yet sometimes you get a little bit leery of his defense. What do you make of him in this spot?
Yeah, I guess we'll put it lightly. He is an interesting fighter. He has made some pretty crazy decisions in there at,
Oh,
at times here, and both of these guys are, kind of coming off, bad performances here, and it's tough to back. Kennedy. He is a guy that's very untrustworthy. He makes, I think, a lot of mistakes out
yes.
there, and even his most recent fight, getting submitted within the first minute, of the fight against Walter Walker here, and I think that in my opinion, in this fight here, I do feel like the market is a little bit overcorrecting on the Kennedy side. I'm not big on him. I have not been big on him, to be honest with you, throughout his career. But this is a spot where a guy has just been submitted in the first round. And now he's facing a jiu-jitsu specialist where, it feels, hey, maybe that's what's going to happen again. Maybe he's going to look for that takedown. The submission absolutely is live here. There's no doubt. But, Buchecha, I'm just not that high on him either. It's tough to
Yeah.
be high on him. In the last fight, even though he needs gets the wrestling on the takedowns, I thought he looked sloppy. I thought he looked really tired very early. Even when he got the takedown, he was sliding off of the back. He wasn't really getting good position. And for a guy that's where he wanted to be in the second round, he really didn't do too much. And I think the far better striker here is Kennedy. Again, he makes, bad decisions. He can be taken down here, but I think Kennedy's striking. I think the 5-inch reach advantage, I think it's going to be very tough for him to kind of cut inside of that. And outside of the first round, I do think Kennedy can start to pick him apart and find a finish and really put it on him with the striking. But I would go Kennedy here. I know the money's been coming in on Buchecha here. I think Kennedy, at minus 130 ish in there is a pretty strong price.
Yeah, Rob Moreno does a great job putting this show together. I love that he doesn't tell me what your picks are, just the fights. And I'm with you on the Kennedy side, so I always feel better when I align with our guest. And Kyle, I'm right there with you. If he can't win this fight here, you really have to start worrying about the future a little bit of Kennedy because I think in checkmate
Right.
right here, minus $1.30 feels like a really good price point here to get his career back on track. Maybe the fight of the night outside of the main event that you can make a case for. The last pirate is back in there, Morgan Charrier
Mm.
against Melky Kostad. This should be all action all the time. We know what type of striker the Frenchman can be here. What do you make of this fight? And it does feel like possibly a toss up. And I'm looking at the numbers here. It's kind of reflected in the odds market here right now. $1.15 to the Costa side. You can get the last pirate at $1.05 if you like Morgan Charrier.
Yeah, this one feels like a minute winner versus a moment winner kind of spot here where, Morgan's gonna need the big knockout. He's gonna need to really hurt you in order to kind of get the victory here. And I do like Costa, the well-roundedness of him where he is finding finishes and getting victories in all different ways. You got Morgan who's really a, KO or bust, I feel kind of guy where,
Yeah.
you've got Costa, 7 KOs, 8 submissions, 9 decisions. He has been able to win all different ways. I like his kicking arsenal. I like his range. I think he's not going to stand in boxing range. There's no way that, Costa is going to say, hey, let's exchange close. I think he stays at range. I do like the kicking arsenal that he does have. And as this fight goes on, statistically speaking, again, Morgan needs the big moments. If you go to decision, Morgan is 5-10 to the decision. So he is a
Oh,
guy that when he gets there, he does not win. And again, he needs those finishes. And I wasn't even impressed with his fight, most recently against Nate Landwehr. Arguably Nate could have been up two going to the third, won the worst. And this is a 37-year-old that blocks punches with his face. So, that really kind of set up very well for Morgan. He did get the kill shot, got the victory, but I do like Costa here, and I think it's a good side from a good matchup.
yeah, and again, that total sitting at 2.5 rounds juiced heavily to the over, to your point there, that the last pirate's gonna have to try to get him out of there. And that was, Kyle, just, back to that fight, the matchup of the best nicknames in the last pirate against Nate that trained. So I absolutely love that fight, and I was hoping that Landwehr could have pulled that out, but he could not. Great stuff, Kyle. Great to have you on the program here on First Strike. Can you tell everybody where they can access all of your material?
Yeah, so check me out first on YouTube, Kyle Anthony's UFC betting show. Also, I do a podcast every Wednesday. I drop it, break down fights as well, and check me on at Twitter at Kyle Anthony UFC. And let's get this money this weekend, and we're gonna go strong into 2026.
Yeah, let's get out of 2025 with a bang, my man, and really set the table here for 2026. Kyle, appreciate your time as always, my friend. When we come back, Rob Moreno, let's get to the model projections and see if they align with Kyle and I. That's next, right here on First Strike.
You're tuned in to First Strike, right here on VSiN, the Sports Betting Network.
We are back on First Strike. Great having Kyle Anthony with us, Rob, in the last segment. Again, if you are not a VSiN Pro subscriber as of yet, what are you waiting for? $9.99 is the introductory offer right now to get on board with First Strike in all of our plays, Rob, not just our UFC picks, but obviously everything we do. NFL will be wrapping up here. We got the college football playoff. Never a better time than right now to become a VSiN Pro subscriber. But when you do, you're going to get all of our picks. And I know you like to add those, Rob, as we go throughout the week, not just our picks, but Kyle's picks as well. We'll be sure to be on the site. $9.99 is that intro offer if you're not a VSiN Pro subscriber as of yet.
Yep. They will be there Friday morning, usually all our picks. Give plenty of time for everyone to go through the card and find their spots. And hey, hopefully we all match up this week. There could be some differences there. You never know.
Sure.
But it's always fun to check it out Friday morning. And as you mentioned, there's plenty of other plays. I know the UFC is winding down this year, so it's important to get the subscription because there's plenty of sports I am not very sharp on, but it's fun to have the pros and everyone else at VSiN to get their insight from.
And by the way, that's a great point, Rob. That's why we do what we do on the network. And you and I are obviously focused here on the UFC. We've got so many other people dedicated to anything that might wet your whistle here in the sports world. So we've got you covered from pillar to post here on VSiN. So, but we appreciate you watching us and listening to us here on First Strike. We're trying to make you some money out there, so we do appreciate your time. Rob, let's get to the model projections that you have. Just talked about it with Kyle. I am fascinated by the Amanda Lemos fight against Jillian Robertson. I've I really like the tenacity of somebody that Amanda tends to have. She is a slight dog here, about a plus $1.66 betting underdog. Jillian feels like that fighter, in a positive way. What a bulldog she can be, and when she's just mean. I like that. That's a compliment to everybody listening out there. That when she gets you in harm's way, she wants to finish this fight. She's not looking to win this thing on points. What do you make of that? Because I mentioned in women's MMA, it's rare to find in a 3-round fight a total sitting at 2.5, juiced to the under slightly at $1.15. What are you seeing in the model projections in that fight?
So I also made a note on that total when I saw it, just realizing that this is, we talk about at least, one women's MMA bout a week, and all of them are always juiced to the over, like minus
Always.
300, minus 400 sometimes. You're like, there's no potential for finish. This one has that potential. Lemos is super tough, and Robertson, like you mentioned, a bully in a good way. She gets
Yes.
in there, and I mean, there's kind of been, she's been around a minute. She came around via Ultimate Fighter back in like 2017 or something like that. And
Yeah.
it feels like she's had two different versions of a career. Like I feel like this second half has really been her, maybe it's that final stretch and the potential of a dream title bid for her. Lemos, on the other hand, kind of like Kyle mentioned, definitely on the latter part of her career, 38 years old, already had that title shot. But, let's see what the model says. Robertson is riding a nice 4-fight win streak,
Mhm.
which her last loss came yeah, her last loss was back in 2023. She's coming off a TKO win over Marina Rodriguez. And yeah, the big question is Lemos declining, right? Her career's kind of been back and forth since
Yeah.
that title uh, shot she had, coming off that decision loss to Tatiana Suarez, which kind of brings me to some of those worries for Lemos. She was only taken down a couple times by Tatiana Suarez in that fight, but Suarez still had over 9 minutes of control time. So, she defended the takedowns well, but when those takedowns happened, man, she couldn't do anything. And, we've seen the most recent version of Tatiana Suarez. She's not really evolving the way we thought she would. So
Right.
it brings concerns for Amanda. Her XR percentage now in 48%, so she's losing rounds more often. Robertson's up at 62%. She is bullying maybe lesser competition. Amanda has definitely a stronger strength of schedule, but she's not. If you're looking for striking here, it's not going to be in this match. There's better fights for that because neither fighter lands over 3 significant strikes per minute.
Mm.
You're talking close to zero and negative differentials. So the striking isn't going to be where things are won. Although Amanda does have 6 knockdowns in her career, Jillian has proven tough. She's never been knocked down.
Right.
So maybe Amanda can land a shot that can change the narrative. But if this gets into the grappling, I do have concerns for Lemos. Robertson has 77% control rate. And as we mentioned, Tatiana, she was able to get her down only a couple times, but it narrated the entire fight. 35 takedowns for Robertson already. She attempts 6.13 per 5 minutes.
Mm.
So she's going to be busy. She's going to try to get this down. Lemos, 31% control, and she only has 10 takedowns. So not super aggressive offensively. She does have those submission attempts, obviously, but Robertson equally as skilled in that area. So everything points me towards Robertson. Unfortunately, I do feel like the number has gotten a little too big.
Yeah.
When I was writing things out, she was around minus 185. I was able to find, shop around. I was able to find her at minus 170. So I
Oh,
grabbed that.
great
Um,
point.
the value is definitely kind of lost. This morning we found her at minus 198. I think that's too much, especially against Lemos, who, while we are saying, at least I'm saying, there is a decline, she is maybe later in the career. She's always dangerous, man, and she is tough. Kind of like Kyle mentioned, she'll come prepared. I have Robertson at minus 170, but I'm not sure I would play it again, considering where the number's moving.
And that's something we talk about with Reed Kuhn all the time, right? Kind of the father of the modeling
Yeah.
is that the model is going to say at $1.70 it's worth a play. It's not going to be worth a play at minus $2. And I know some people listening or watching are going to go, "Well, why would that matter? It's just 30 cents." The value that the model has is going to be extracted by the rising price on Jillian. So while I concur with you and Kyle and the model that she should be the betting favorite here, around $1.70 is a playable number. It might not be at $2. I would look to the over
Mhm.
at 2.5 here, and you can get that at minus $1.05 out there instead of laying this bigger number here with Jillian. Because of what you told, what we just discussed, which is the tenacity and the toughness of Alamos, I would expect the fight to get down to the ground. Yes, Jillian's going to look to finish. There's no doubt about it. But if prime Tatiana Suarez, and I put that in air quotes here because I'm not sure what that means
For the
anymore.
audio audience.
Right, for the audio, right? In bunny ears, that she could not submit Amanda on the ground, then as tough as Jillian is, and as much as she will posture up and look for ground and pound too, it might not necessarily be a submission she's looking for. But once the fight gets to the ground, that's when Jillian turns into a different woman and really tries to get you out of there. I don't know that if Suarez, Prime Suarez couldn't do it, that she can do it at this age. I can see Amanda surviving off her back, trying to keep the fight standing. And if she keeps the fight standing, you mentioned it, Jillian's super tough. So why would I be led to believe that Lemos could knock out Jillian on the feet? I don't see that playing out either. That's what gets me to an over 2.5 at -5.
I love that play as well. I mean, especially considering the price we can get on an over here in
You
what is,
never get that.
statistically speaking, women's bouts tend to go to the decision anyways. And you're right. If Suarez couldn't get her out of there, Lemos is tough late. That's kind of what steers fights differently. You go to
Yeah,
back to that Suarez fight, that third round, we thought Lemos could steal the fight.
totally.
She wasn't able to get taken down. She was fighting back. It was just too little, too late. And maybe we see the exact. Jillian Robertson has the recipe there. Like, hey, if I can control her at least 2 rounds, she won't have enough gas in the tank to finish me in the third, and we get there to a decision. So I totally see the journey there for the over.
Well, let's get to the main event with the Raw Dog, Brandon Royval against Starboy. Good nicknames, too, for Manel Kape against Royval in this one. Look, I have an affinity for Brandon. I played him in the Joshua Van fight, came up short in that, but still liked the play in that he was right there with now the new champion in the division after Pantoja. What a terrible turn of events for us. I know. And really, look, had the under, so we cashed that, but lose the Pantoja side because I did feel like we'll never know. I did feel like Pantoja was gonna walk through Joshua Van. I hate to say that
He
because
looked angry.
he really did. He looked everything looked great until you break your arm,
Yeah.
defending a takedown, which is just bizarre, or trying to brace yourself, for a fall. And now you get Royval coming off that Joshua Van fight not that long ago, and he took significant damage. And look, up until the last minute of the fight, you could call it a toss-up, and then clearly Van put it on him in the last 60 seconds to get that 29-28 victory on the cards. But it wasn't like Royval was outclassed by Joshua Van, who is now the champion. I know Manel Kape fancies him to be the champ in waiting. He's got all the requisite skills to do it. He frustrates me from a betting perspective sometimes because he takes the foot off the gas when he hurts guys. And I know he's got one punch knockout power, which is rare in this division. But should he be a $3 betting favorite in your eyes, in the model's eyes, against the Raw Dog?
So it's I won't spoil. Let me read through some stats. I almost jumped
All
the
right.
gun. But you're right. Royval's style kind of hurts him sometimes, right? And you're right. You're talking about key moments in that Van fight, and Royval could have been lined up for a rematch, right, against
Totally.
Pantoja, rewritten the entire history in this title situation, but he got the loss, and it's his style that definitely bleeds into his XR percentage. Sometimes, he's down at 55%, but it's because he embraces the chaos. He
Yeah.
gets hit, he hits. Royval lands 5.55 significant strikes per minute, a positive differential. So he avoids some damage, but he's still absorbing over 4. He has 3 knockdowns, so he's got some power. Now, Cop, 5 significant strikes landed per minute with a .99 differential. So they both absorb around 4. So where we lack striking in the women's bout, we're going to get some striking here, and you're going to get some dudes getting hit in the face. But the power goes to Manel Kape, right? He's got
Huge.
6 knockdowns scored
Yep.
already. And Royval has been knocked down before, 3 times actually. And Manel Kape, he's got great head defense, which is impressive for this division that moves so quickly, right? He's got 70% head defense, Royval 54%. Royval, we've seen him get hit plenty. And, we will put an asterisk that a lot of these metrics are probably affected by the war he was in with Joshua Van last time, right?
Totally.
Kyle mentioned how many significant strikes were landed total in that fight. It was a back and forth. Grappling, we're not really looking there. It's not really, neither guy has heavy control. Manel does have 81% takedown defense, but Royval's not really pushing that pace anyways. So if we're just seeing a striking fight, Royval likes to bring the chaos in. Can he avoid enough damage to not get one
Yeah.
punch knocked out? Kyle said it best. He actually took the exact narrative I was leaning is that Royval's tough. He only has that one TKO loss. It's to Brandon Moreno, but it was a shoulder injury. It wasn't exactly like a
Right.
flash knockout.
Got
Um,
50.
maybe that's a thing that happens in the flyweight division. Maybe there's,
Yeah.
um, but Manel Kape, his last recent TKOs were in the third round. They happened later in fights. His last first round TKO was when he was facing much lesser competition. Since then, it's either been 3 decisions or 2 knockouts in the third round. So I lean to believe that Royval's toughness can push this past, first of all, the 3.5 that we talked about also. But I was also so the model does give him Manel Kape a 72% win probability. There's not really a ton of value. Even when I looked yesterday at his odds at -285, we're not
Right.
really there. We're not really at the point of I can even find a spot to bet him straight up in a money line or even a parlay in any kind of way. Um, and his odds have continued to just balloon up. But it's looking at the decision prop for me.
Yeah.
I thought knockout prop is obviously the way the market kind of leans with, it's got him around plus 130, I saw. But the decision, I think Royval can last. I think it's going to be a back and forth. We may see a similar fight to what we saw with Joshua Van, but Manel's just, he's a little bit cleaner with the strikes. He's going to
Mhm.
avoid heavy damage. He's not going to breathe into the chaos too much, and it may go back and forth. But I think the over's totally in play. But I like Manel Kape by decision as well.
Yeah, I'm on the over, -40 for 3.5 rounds. I would be fascinated because I do think I can see a scenario where Brandon gets hit. I don't whether he's hurt or not, would Manel Kape follow him to the ground? Because that's where the danger would lie for Kape. I think if the fight hit the ground, that's where, Royval with his submission attempts could be very, very dangerous on the ground. I don't know that he would pose the problem for Manel with the hands. That I think Starboy would love to play that hands game with him all day. All right,
Oh yeah.
great. I'll counter you, and I'm gonna hit you with the better shot, the bigger shot eventually, and I'm gonna hurt you, right? And I do think Manel Kape is gonna look physically bigger
Mhm.
than Brandon Royval when we get in that octagon in the flyweight division on Saturday night. Plus, it's a small octagon at Apex, and that normally does help, certainly the striker. But I will say this: if you're trying to get the fight down to the ground, and he's trying to grab a leg on Manel Kape, that could be the one shot for Royval to extend this fight. But yes, I think Kape should be the favorite. I love the overplays at 3.5 and potentially without picking a winner because it could get dicey if it goes all five, Rob. And all of a sudden, Kape does sometimes what he does is he's showboating, he's pot shotting. So if we're scoring on damage, he should win the fight. But does he do enough in the judge's eye against a guy like Royval who's trying these crazy submissions? Maybe he's pulling guard, maybe he's in the clinch, gets off some elbows, and then it looks differently than really the fight's going. So I think that's the danger in backing Kape at this big number if he can't get the clean knockout of a guy like Brandon Royval. So if you really believe that he's going to knock out Royval, great. Then you can lay the price point or play the small plus money in the KO prop. But I'm with you. I like the overs. Potentially the fight to hit the go to cards, and I might not even pick a winner there. I would think it'd be Kape by decision, but I get a little nervy if they go all five and you start to go, oh man, here's Manel Kape doing what he normally does, hot dogging too much, and not putting away a guy that he's clearly better than. That would be my one concern if we go all five.
I would
Rob,
be
we got
very sad if the final main
oh,
event of the year was a questionable decision and we just leave the year with that taste in our
what
mouth.
a way to ring out 2025, right?
Yeah.
That's exactly the way. Rob, for people that are VSiN Pro subscribers and VSiN.com, your write-ups start on tomorrow on Thursday?
They'll be up on Thursday. You can check out Luz first of all. He gets in there first and he lays out his plays for the week and on VSiN.com, and then I'll set mine up for Thursday. Not as big a write up as last week with the
Yeah.
big pay-per-view finale. Not that this is a bad card, but it definitely feels like when the Pro Bowl used to be played after the Super Bowl. It's like
Right.
we're s- you know we're
Hey,
we don't want to say goodbye to football yet, so we're gonna watch, but we know this isn't the deepest of cards.
we still have Giga Chikadze's back in the card. I'm excited to see Giga kicks again, see if he's
Yeah.
still got it in him. But no, you're right. It's definitely not the pay-per-view that we saw a week ago, but still, for some of the lighter weight divisions, some pretty good names still in this card. And everybody, again, out there, if you are following us here at First Strike, please like and subscribe to the podcast for me and Rob as we re-kickstart this thing in 2025 and carry it over to 2026. Rob, you and I are going to be back next week, though. We'll put a little bow on 2025.
Yes, we're doing a bonus episode to end the year. Yeah, we'll just put a bow on it, recap some of our favorite things we hit, and yeah, just say goodbye to the year before we step into the holiday season.
Might even have some eggnog with that show here and
Ooh,
then a
okay.
little whiskey in there, yeah, for some fun.
Don't tell
Rob,
don't
you're the
tell
best.
Steve.
Appreciate you as always, everybody. The Robbio on X, at D-Ross Sports on X. And again, give your boys a like and a subscribe on wherever you get your podcast and check out First Strike. So for Rob Moreno and Kyle Anthony, I'm Dave Ross. We'll see you next week right back here on VSiN, the Sports Betting Network.